There is a watch sitting in a drawer somewhere in your house that cost about $15. Plastic case, resin strap, a little digital display that has not changed since the 1980s. It is a Casio F91W. And right now, that cheap piece of plastic is keeping better time than a $10,000 Rolex. You would assume the expensive one wins. It does not even close. That Casio drifts around half a second a day. A brand new Rolex, fresh out of Geneva, regulated to the strictest standard the company puts on a dial, is allowed to drift twice that. So you can pay 500 times more money and walk away with measurably worse timekeeping. By the end of this video, you will know exactly why that happens. You will know why the entire luxury watch industry quietly stopped competing on accuracy decades ago, why a chronometer certificate means far less than the marketing implies, and how one Japanese watch from 1969 nearly wiped the Swiss off the map. So how does a watch that costs less than a tank of gas keep better time than one that costs as much as a used car? The answer is not marketing. It is physics. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Let's put real figures on the table, because the gap is wider than almost anyone realizes. A standard quartz watch, the kind in that Casio or in a $40 Timex, holds an accuracy of roughly 15 to 30 seconds a month. Spread that across the whole month, and you are looking at about half a second to 1 second of drift per day. Steady, boring, reliable. Now, take a mechanical watch. A good one, not a knockoff, a real one. The kind people save up for. A typical mechanical movement runs somewhere between 20 and 40 seconds a day. Not a month, a day. That is not a typo, by the way. In the time the Casio loses 1 second, a respectable automatic can lose 40. Multiply that out and the picture gets uncomfortable. Your mechanical watch can drift further in a single afternoon than the Casio drifts in a month. Leave a high-end automatic sitting in a drawer for 2 weeks, and you can come back to a watch that is 5 or 6 minutes off. The Casio, untouched in the same drawer, would still be within a handful of seconds. And we are not talking about junk movements here. We are talking about the engines inside watches that cost more than some cars. But here is the detail that everyone glosses over. The very best quartz on Earth does not measure its error in seconds per month. It measures it in seconds per year. The Citizen Caliber 0100 is rated to 1 second a year. 1 second. Across 365 days. That is roughly 100,000 times more accurate than a fine mechanical watch. And it sips power from light. Think about that for a second. The most accurate independent wristwatch ever built runs on a battery charged by a desk lamp. So if quartz crushes mechanical this badly, the obvious question is why? And the answer lives inside the movement, in something called frequency. Every watch keeps time by counting a thing that repeats. In a mechanical watch, that thing is the balance wheel, a tiny weighted wheel that swings back and forth on a hairspring. A good modern balance swings about 3 to 5 times a second. That is the heartbeat. Every tick is the watch taking a measurement of time, and the watch is only ever as accurate as the gaps between those ticks. A quartz crystal does the same job, except it does not swing 3 to 5 times a second. It vibrates 32,768 times every single second. That specific number is not random. It is 2 raised to the 15th power, which lets a simple circuit divide it cleanly down to 1 tick per second. So in the time a balance wheel takes 1 swing, a quartz crystal takes roughly 8,000. 8,000 checkpoints against time versus 1. The more often you check, the less room error has to pile up. Picture 2 people trying to measure out exactly 1 minute. One taps their foot every 15 seconds and counts to 4. The other has a machine ticking thousands of times a second. If both are off by the same tiny fraction on each beat, the foot tapper's error has nowhere to hide, while the machine's errors average out into almost nothing. That is the whole game. Higher frequency means smaller, more forgiving slices of time, and quartz slices time 8,000 times finer than the best mechanical heartbeat. And that Citizen I mentioned does not even play in the same league. It pushes its crystal past 8 million vibrations a second, which is part of how it reaches 1 second a year. But frequency is only half the story. The other half is everything that tries to wreck a mechanical watch from the outside. Temperature, for one. Metal expands when it warms and contracts when it cools, and that changes how the hairspring behaves, which changes the rate. Wear it on a hot wrist, leave it on a cold nightstand, and the watch literally keeps different time. Quartz barely notices. Then there is gravity. A mechanical watch keeps slightly different time lying flat than it does standing on its crown, because gravity pulls on that swinging balance. Watchmakers invented an entire complication, the tourbillon, just to fight this problem. And a tourbillon can add tens of thousands of dollars to the price while still losing to a Casio. Position does nothing to a quartz crystal. Magnetism is next. Your phone, your laptop, the magnetic clasp on a bag, all of it can throw a mechanical hairspring off rate, sometimes badly. And then there is the slow stuff nobody sees. The oil inside the movement ages and thickens over years, dragging on the gears. The mainspring delivers strong torque when fully wound and weaker torque as it runs down, so the watch speeds up and slows across the day. Every one of those forces is a tax on accuracy, and mechanical watches pay all of them. Quartz pays almost none. There is a quiet irony buried in that. A watchmaker can spend years and a small fortune engineering a movement to resist gravity, heat, and magnetism, and a 30-year-old quartz module the size of a fingernail shrugs off all three for free. The cheap thing is not winning by accident, it is winning by design. So that is the engineering reality. Now, watch how the luxury industry handles a reality it cannot win. They certify it. You have seen the words on the dial. Chronometer, superlative chronometer, master chronometer. They sound like guarantees of precision, and the testing behind them is genuinely serious. The problem is what counts as passing. The big independent standard is COSC, the official Swiss chronometer testing body. To earn that chronometer label, a movement has to run within -4 to +6 seconds a day, tested over 15 days in 5 positions at 3 temperatures. That is real demanding work. It is also a window of 10 full seconds a day. Omega and Metis, the Swiss Federal Metrology Institute, tightened it to 0 to +5. Rolex went furthest with its in-house superlative standard, -2 to +2 seconds a day, and they guarantee it for 5 years. -2 to +2, that is the gold standard, the number the entire premium Swiss industry treats as the summit of mechanical timekeeping. And it is still hundreds of times worse than the quartz movement in a watch you could buy with the change in your car door. People think the certificate closes the gap. It does not even dent it. A chronometer is a mechanical watch that loses time impressively slowly. It is not, and never will be, as accurate as cheap quartz. And notice what is quietly missing from every one of those standards. None of them measure against quartz. The whole chronometer system grades mechanical watches against other mechanical watches, because the moment you let a $15 Casio into the room, the entire leaderboard turns into a joke. The contest only stays interesting if the most accurate watches on Earth are not allowed to compete. If you are getting value from this breakdown, take a second to subscribe. I dig into the watch world without the hype every week. So here is the part that turns this from a fun fact into actual history. Because the industry already knew all of this, and it nearly killed them. Go back to December of 1969. Seiko releases a watch called the Astron in Tokyo. It is the first quartz wristwatch ever sold, and it is accurate to about 5 seconds a month. At a stroke, a Japanese company had built a watch around 100 times more accurate than the finest Swiss mechanical movements, the watches Switzerland had spent 2 centuries perfecting. The Astron cost about as much as a small car at launch. That seemed like a problem the Swiss could ignore. It was not. Because prices on electronics only ever go one direction. Within a few years, quartz was cheaper to build than mechanical, more accurate, and it never needed winding. Seiko, Citizen, and a calculator company called Casio poured into the gap. The Swiss, sitting on the most respected name in watchmaking, treated quartz as a gimmick and kept polishing their gears. What happened next is one of the most brutal collapses in modern manufacturing. Between 1970 and 1988, employment in the Swiss watch industry fell from around 90,000 people to roughly 28,000. 2 out of every 3 jobs gone. The number of Swiss watch companies dropped from about 1,600 to 600. Storied names went bankrupt or got swallowed. They called it the quartz crisis, and for a while, it genuinely looked like the end of Swiss watchmaking. Picture entire valley towns where the only real employer was a watch factory, and the work that families had passed down for generations simply evaporated. The most respected craft in the country turned into a liability almost overnight. The Swiss had not been beaten by a better business plan. They had been beaten by a rock that vibrates. So, how is Switzerland still the center of the watch universe today? They did something clever and a little ruthless. They stopped competing on the one thing they were losing at. They could not beat quartz on accuracy, so they decided accuracy was not the point anymore. The rescue came in 2 moves. The first was to stop being too proud to make a cheap watch. In 1983, a sharp financier named Nicholas Hayek helped merge 2 collapsing Swiss giants and launched the Swatch, a colorful plastic quartz watch built to beat the Japanese at their own low-cost game. Swatch sold by the tens of millions, and those profits quietly bankrolled the second move, the one that actually mattered. Mechanical watches got rebranded. Not as instruments, but as heritage, as craft, as art you wear on your wrist. The pitch shifted from, "This keeps perfect time," to, "A human being assembled this by hand, it will outlive you, and your grandson will wear it." A mechanical watch stopped being a tool and became a story, a status symbol, an heirloom. That repositioning saved the industry. The same watches that lost the accuracy war became more valuable precisely because they had stopped pretending to fight it. Which brings us all the way back to that $15 Casio in the drawer, and the real reason none of this is actually a scam. People do not buy a mechanical watch to know what time it is. Your phone already does that, atomically, for free. They buy it for the sweep of a seconds hand that glides instead of ticks, for the tiny gears visible through a sapphire caseback, hand-finished by someone who trained for years, for the weight of it, the history of the name, the fact that it runs on nothing but a wound spring and human ingenuity. No battery, no signal, no help. They buy it for how it makes them feel and what it says about them. That is not a defect hiding behind marketing. That is the entire proposition, stated honestly. The accuracy gap is not the embarrassing secret of the luxury watch world. It is the whole reason the luxury watch world still exists. A Casio tells you the time. A mechanical watch tells you something about yourself. You are simply paying for 2 completely different things, and only one of them can be measured in seconds. So the next time someone scoffs that your expensive watch runs a few seconds slow, you can tell them the truth. It is supposed to. That $15 Casio in the drawer will outtick a Rolex every single day of its life. And that has been true for over 50 years. The Swiss did not lose the accuracy war by accident. They surrendered it on purpose, and then sold the surrender as the prize. If that reframed how you think about what is on your wrist, subscribe and stick around. There is a lot more the watch world would rather you not think too hard about.